Ladies and gentlemen, this is the operator. Today's conference is scheduled to begin momentarily. Until that time, your lines will again be placed on music hold. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon. My name is Chris, and I will be your conference operator today. Welcome to the Cirrus Logic second quarter fiscal year 2015 financial results Q&A session. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. After a brief statement, we will open up the call for questions from analysts. Instructions for queuing up will be provided at that time. As a reminder, this conference call is being recorded for replay purposes. I would now like to turn the call over to Mr. Thurman Case, Chief Financial Officer. Mr. Case, you may begin.
Thank you and good afternoon. Joining me on today's call is Jason Rhode, Cirrus Logic's President and Chief Executive Officer, and Chelsea Heffernan, Manager of Investor Relations. Today we announced our financial results for the second quarter fiscal year 2015 at approximately 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The shareholder letter discussing our financial results, the earnings press release, including a reconciliation of non-GAAP financial information to the most directly comparable GAAP information, along with the webcast of this Q&A session, are all available at the company's investor relations website at investor.cirrus.com. This call will feature questions from the analysts covering our company, as well as questions submitted to us via email at investor.relations@cirrus.com. Please note that during this session, we may make projections and other forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results to differ materially from projections. By providing this information, the company undertakes no obligation to update or revise any projections or forward-looking statements, whether as a result of new developments or otherwise. Please refer to the press release issued today, which is available on the Cirrus Logic website, and the latest Form 10-K and 10-Q, as well as other corporate filings made with the Securities and Exchange Commission for additional discussion of risk factors that could cause actual results to differ materially from current expectations. Now, I'd like to turn the call over to Jason Rhode, our President and Chief Executive Officer. Jason?
Thank you, Thurman. Before we begin taking questions, I'd like to make a few comments. For a detailed account of our financial results, please read the shareholder letter posted on our investor relations website. Q2 was an outstanding quarter for Cirrus Logic, as we delivered revenue of $210.2 million, which included approximately 5 weeks of contribution from the Wolfson acquisition. GAAP EPS for the September quarter was 1 cent, and non-GAAP EPS was 68 cents. GAAP results reflect $32.3 million in acquisition-related charges. On a standalone basis, Cirrus Logic generated $197.2 million in revenue, exceeding expectations as strong demand for portable audio products was fueled by shipments ramping in several new flagship smartphones. The strategic rationale for the acquisition was primarily driven by the fundamental value of Wolfson's technology, skilled engineering teams, and the potential for the combined company to capitalize on additional opportunities. The acquisition accelerates Cirrus Logic's strategic roadmap, further strengthens our technology portfolio with the addition of MEMS microphones, advanced DSP technology, and extensive software capabilities, particularly in the Android ecosystem, and expands our development capacity and customer base. As the only IC supplier of a solution that spans the complete audio signal chain from capture to playback, Cirrus Logic is now well positioned as a market leader with a broad portfolio of custom and general market products shipping in many Tier 1 flagship devices today, including 5 of the top 10 global smartphone OEMs. The combined company is leveraging our unparalleled expertise in analog and mixed signal technology, comprehensive software capabilities, and world-class engineering teams to drive continued innovation in the rapidly changing audio market. As the value placed on audio and voice technology continues to increase, there is an opportunity to drive revenue growth over the next several years through the addition of new customers and expanding content with existing customers. Before we begin the Q&A, I would also like to note that while we understand there is intense interest related to our largest customer, in accordance with our policy, we do not discuss specifics about our business relationship. Operator, we're now ready to take questions.
Thank you. And at this time, I would like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question through the phone, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Your first question is from Tore Svanberg with Stifel. Your line is open.
Oh, yeah, hi guys. This is Eric calling in for Tori. I wanted to get to your current quarter. It looks like your largest customer is 73%. So, and you'd mentioned a lot of traction in with other OEMs. Is it safe to assume that that number was around approaching double digit or 10 million, or and was that in line with your expectations?
I'm sorry, I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, so I want to make sure I
sure.
answer the right.
Your largest customer was 73%, and you're kind of breaking out your business now of portable and non-portable. And if we look at that, I'm assuming your largest customer goes into the portable bucket, and that was about 154 million, and your portable audio was 164. Should we assume that the traction you were talking about with other customers, several flagship platforms, did that approach the double-digit amount in the quarter in revenue?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, because the portable versus non-portable isn't really split by customers, because, for example, computers would be in non-portable.
Okay, but safe to assume you had nice growth with these other platforms, exclusive of Wolfson.
Yeah, we're seeing very good things out of some of the other folks in the mobile space. You know, I would characterize that business as a little bit more typical of the analog and mixed signal market, where, you know, especially the cell phone market in the Chinese market is a lot more opportunistic. You know, you're going to win one model and then not win the next model necessarily. It's difficult to create a dynasty in that market, no pun intended. But we're very comfortable with how we're doing there. We see a lot of demand for the ability to differentiate in some of these smaller accounts. You know, a lot of times there are opportunities to differentiate as part of the core chipset are very limited, and so they're looking to things like louder speakers or karaoke functions or very high signal-to-noise ratio performance, for example. Sometimes to a surprising extent, we're seeing that start to drive demand in some of these other accounts. So we're really optimistic about what the future holds for us there.
Thank you. And then based on your Q4 outlook, can you comment on what was some of the specific areas where, or maybe elaborate what the negative market factors are that's causing the steep declines in their business?
So for the December quarter, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that, you know, over the last 6 months, the outlook for, let's call it the high end of the Android handset space is significantly more muted than people would have expected 3 or certainly 6 months ago. So I think that's a large part of it. You know, I think that the Wolfson team had done and now as part of Cirrus continues to do a great job of winning the designs that they expected to win. And then the kind of secondary factors that indicate how much, or that determine how much revenue we'll get off of that are, you know, obviously how successful are those models in the end market, and then ultimately, in some cases where a handset manufacturer might have multiple designs for the same handset, it's a question of how much of that split do we get versus, you know, some other solution, and that is unfortunately neither of those two things are in our control. So. Like I say, I think the UK team have done a great job of winning the designs that they said they were going to win and positioning us very well to continue to do that in the future, and also, you know, strategically try to address at least the split of within each model that we do get, trying to hopefully steer as much of it our way as possible when there is a lever for us to